The Democrats kick off their We the People convention, sparking us to ask today, who are we the people and which people are we talking about? Hi, I'm Scott Ott and this is Bill Whittle now. And Bill, last night was the kickoff of the very strange, disassociated, non-congealed, agglomerated Democratic convention, meaning there's no big concentrations of people all in one place. And they're taking the theme, We the People, of course, from one of our founding documents written more than 100 years ago, not sure which one. It made me wonder, though, Bill, how we can even make a statement like that anymore. It just seems like everything is divided not only on party lines, but on racial lines, on lines of sex and ancestry and choices that various people make about lifestyles. What does it mean today when you stand up as a politician or a political party and try to speak a unifying message to we the people?
Before I answer that, was this slogan written down someplace? Did you see it written down?
I've heard that it was once handwritten in old-timey language.
No, I mean the Democratic slogan. They spell it W-E, right? W-E, the people.
I actually heard it on the radio.
Are you sure that it's not we the people as in W-E-E, as in to make smaller we the people?
Or it could be the Macron rendering of it, which is we, O-U-I, the people. Yes, we can.
Yes, we the people. Well, look, Scott, the short answer is the reason that they're calling it the We the People Convention is the same reason that when Barack Obama was found to spend 1,000 Sunday in Reverend Wright's church, he issued the denial on an American flag factory. I mean, how many flags were behind him at the time? 30? Something like that? It's the trappings, right? And
so you're basically saying they're cloaking themselves in our framers' documents about which they know little and believe less.
I think, look, if you're an American political party, you get to cloak yourself in the documents of the founders. I think the issue I have with it is, which party is the one that is more in line? And I mean, this is not like a near thing. One party is essentially about, well, let's not even say party. One group of people is about conserving the ideals, the traditional liberal ideals as set forth in the Constitution, which begins with we the people. The other party is determined that the Constitution is in the way of their amassing political power, and they're 100% right about that. And so they're in the process of doing everything they can to destroy the Constitution. And it's an especially interesting choice given the fact that the Democrats have always been the party that says that the Constitution is a dated historical document suitable for framing, like Washington crossing the Delaware. So anytime you see Democrats wrapping themselves in the flag, it means they're in real trouble.
Now, Bill, it's interesting. Opening night speeches last night, as you see this, came from stalwarts of the party that people might expect, like the former First Lady Michelle Obama, Bernie Sanders, who gave Joe Biden a run for his money toward the nomination, of which Biden is the presumptive nominee at this point, and John Kasich, former Republican governor of Ohio and failed presidential candidate himself. Now, at every go-round of these conventions, each party tends to bring in somebody associated with the other party, or at least not completely seen as on board with their party, to show that they're crossing the aisle. And it made me wonder, not so much what you think of John Kasich, I think I know the answer to that, but what if they had really brought in somebody from the other side of the aisle, like let's say a Bill Whittle, to speak to the Democratic convention? Now, keep in mind, you're going to be doing this by video. So in essence, what you're doing now is the same thing that you would be doing then. And I want you to take this question seriously. If you had an opportunity to give what apparently people are complaining is a very truncated set of remarks to the convention, you get 2 to 5 minutes. What do you say to the party faithful?
First thing that flew into my head is I would repeat the sign that was placed on during the Civil War, the Battle of Vicksburg. Vicksburg was the city and had tremendous number of guns covering the Mississippi River. You really were assumed that you couldn't get past it. And on one evening, the Union troops put together like a dummy paddle wheeler, and they set fires in the dummy smokestacks and sailed it past the Vicksburg defenses, and Vicksburg shot the living hell out of it, didn't seem to damage it at all, just kept sailing on until finally it ran aground. It was just a giant practical joke, essentially. And when the Confederates got there in the wheelhouse, they found a sign that said, "Deluded people, give up." And that, I think, would be my message to the Democratic Party.
Seriously, I mean, we spent a lot of time, the accusation goes, preaching to the choir, because the kind of people who would watch something like this are people who, are susceptible to confirmation bias and just want to hear what they already believe, or at least that's the caricature. But if you really had a chance to talk to faithful Democrats, is there any use in doing so at all? I mean, John Kasich's not going to go in there and preach conservatism. He's going to go in there and talk about what a great guy Joe Biden is. But you might do something different, wouldn't you?
You're asking me if I had 4 or 5 minutes, what would I say to Democrats as a conservative?
As yourself, yes.
Okay. I would simply say this. It's not important whether or not you believe that Republicans have good intentions. I'm sure by now most of you are completely convinced that everything that the Republicans do, they do for evil purposes, and the mirror image exists on the other side. So I would simply ask you to use your own vision, your own eyesight, and your own common sense and ask yourself this question. What are the worst places in America, and who gets hurt worst by them? The worst places in America, by far, the only really bad places in America, are America's toxic inner cities. The people who get hurt by those toxic inner cities are predominantly Black Americans. Now, every one of those cities, every single one of these toxic hellholes where 8,000 people are murdered every year, 8,000 Black people, doesn't seem to matter too much to you, to be honest with you. I know you care an awful lot about the 4% of the people, of Black Americans that are killed by police under any circumstances whatsoever. But 96% of the Black lives that are actually lost in this country are lost to other Black murderers. And they live in these cities. And what do these cities have in common? The one thing that they have in common, all of them, is that they've been run exclusively by Democrats for at least 60 years. In the case of Atlanta, it's something like 140 years. Baltimore, St. Louis, Chicago, Detroit, all of them. The only major city in America that broke that century-long government rule by Democrats was New York City, which used to be the murder capital of the world. And then a Republican took office and he decided to enforce the law, and New York dropped out of the top 10. I believe it dropped out of the top 20. That was Rudy Giuliani. So there's one control experiment here of what happens when a Republican runs a city. When a Republican runs a city, the murder rate plummets, and the people who are not being murdered are Black Americans primarily. So you have to ask yourself, now that the Democrats are back in charge of New York and you've got a far left progressive, the murder rate has already doubled for New York City in essentially 1 year. Now, if that's not enough reasons for you to vote Republican, that's fine. But that should certainly be enough reason for you to start asking yourself whether or not the policies that you claim you are doing in the name of Black America are doing much more harm than good, and that maybe Black Americans could use a chance to get out from underneath this kind of beneficence on your part and try something different.
Bill, as you probably realize, the Democratic Party isn't held together at this point on a national political level by their devotion to Joe Biden. Joe Biden was a guy whose campaign almost collapsed and then wound up coming back and being able to capture the nomination. So people like Bernie Sanders, who had no love for Joe Biden, are going to be speaking in favor of him. People like Barack Obama, who was apparently tolerant of and had a generally warm, friendly relationship with Biden when he was vice president, but not necessarily respectful of the way he conducted himself politically.
Wasn't he the last Democrat in America to endorse Joe Biden? Barack Obama? I think he was the last Democrat in America.
But so my point is that the convention is going to, salute Joe Biden. But really, the convention is doubtless going to be about the current occupant of the White House. I mean, after all, if you want to get a job where somebody already has that job and doesn't want to give it up, you got to get the other guy fired. What should you expect? Or I guess this way, what kind of headphones should you put on when you're listening to the Democratic convention so you can understand what they really mean and what they're trying to do when they go after Donald Trump?
I would recommend noise-canceling headphones. Or alternately, you could try the earplugs that are often found on gun ranges. When you watch a football game, let's say, we always come back to football, the great metaphor for everything in our lives. If you watch a football game on ESPN or something like that, you get a pretty balanced reporting of the game, pretty much. But also simultaneous with the telecast, you will find almost always that there is a local station that is calling the game 100% on the part of the home team. And likewise, from wherever the visitors are, there's another radio station reporting the exact same game in entirely different terms to an entirely different group of fans. So that's what the conventions are. And so far, they've seemed to be pretty flat. I predicted they would be. The speeches just don't have that same kind of punch without a hall full of cheering people. I think that actually is going to hurt the Democrats. A number of things about this COVID-19 thing have been a godsend for the Democrats, but just now it occurred to me that what the Democrats need more than anything, as you pointed out in your question, is they need enthusiasm. And in a room without people in it, you cannot generate that kind of enthusiasm. It's simply not there. Even if you were to add a cheer track, it's not the same because crowd enthusiasm with a speaker is a feedback loop. And the more responsive the crowd is, the more confident that the speaker becomes, and it just goes when it's working. It's something to see, and they don't have that now. The Republicans won't have that either, of course. But enthusiasm for Donald Trump is not dependent on people coming in with pointy hats, and funny. When I say pointy hats, I'm referring to the Democrats. I'm sorry,
but coming in with the banners from the White House.
All of this. My point is, they need enthusiasm. They're not going to get it. And we titled the segment we did on Biden's selection of Kamala Harris. Well, you gave it a real title, an actual title. I just called the thumbnail, "Thank God," because I was concerned about a spoiler, and she doesn't. Black people don't like Kamala Harris. They don't like her record. They don't like how she got where she got. So this was a really poor pick, and it's not like she's going to carry California. If California's in play, then it's over by 7:30 Eastern time. All of this to say that there is an enthusiasm gap here, and the enthusiasm gap got wider with the selection of Kamala Harris as the running mate. Didn't close; it got wider, and no matter how much these people hate Donald Trump, and they continue to hate him beyond human reasoning, what we find, as we found before, is that as the left goes ever leftward, you get fewer and fewer people who are more and more angry, which drives away even more people. And as I've said before, it's like watching a lake dry up in the desert. It becomes more and more alkalized, smaller and smaller, more and more toxic, and finally just turns into kind of salt. And that's what these Democrats are in danger of having happen to them if they don't start listening to the American people. They're going to end up with a party that is a thin kind of a salt of pure toxicity, and they think that covers the entire country, and it doesn't.
I saw a part of a basketball game while I was eating lunch at my other job today, and I don't know everything about what's going on here, but it appeared that they had gotten a bunch of people on like a Zoom call, and they put them on giant screens around the arena. And so when you were watching the game, you could see a crowd, but they weren't really in the stands. They were in these fake, green screened chairs. And they were all around, and they must have been piping in crowd noise. And so really all of that was kind of phony. People were really watching it on video. But the upshot of it was there was an actual basketball game happening. In a convention, if you've got to do this kind of thing, really the convention is more about the crowd in a sense than it is about the speakers, because otherwise it's just some guy giving a speech in front of a camera. I just don't know how either side can really capitalize on this strange setup.
Yeah, there's a technical term. It's a computer internet term for what you talked about, where they basically have a Zoom audience full of people at a basketball game. The technical term for that is called pathetic. And And that's what it is. It's pathetic. Let's just stop playing around. A Zoom screen, if I'm looking at a screen, a big screen far away, a small screen close up, I can probably resolve maybe 5 by 5. So that's what the public schools for a couple of years, 25 different boxes, right? So to give you the idea that this is a crowd is just, it's sad. And I personally think if it were me watching that game, I didn't see it, but if I was watching, I think I'd feel much sadder. Let's just televise it, you know? The vast majority of people watching a basketball game are not at the basketball court, just televise it. But anyway, to answer your question, yes, it's very different at a convention than it is at a basketball game. At a basketball game, you are spectators. At a convention, you are active players. You are presumably, well, and in fact, casting the votes that are going to determine one party's nominee for the president of the United States. And I don't know how many times I've heard this. I haven't been to one, Scott. I think you have ever been to a national convention. But the convention is really for the delegates, really, more than anything, right? I mean, they've worked their tails off for both sides for 2-3 years at least, and now there's a chance to go someplace exotic and mysterious and romantic, like Minneapolis, let's say, and
rub elbows with a lot of other like-minded people and get a chance to shake hands with famous people and
drink heavily afterwards and all the rest. Yeah. And that's true for both parties. So the people who are getting hurt the most by this, I think, are probably the convention goers. But again, as a person that's worked in show business in the art of creating the illusion of things that are not really there, it is a very different experience listening to a sitcom without a laugh track or listening to a public speech, especially one that's designed to rouse people and fire up the base. It is an entirely different thing. Hearing that without the laugh track, or even hearing it with a bad laugh track, you need the social proof. You need people to be cheering when you want to cheer. You need people to be laughing when you want to laugh. They're not going to get either of that there. Neither will the Republicans, as I said, but Donald Trump does not depend on that. He does not have an enthusiasm gap. The people who vote for Trump and who love Trump love him to the rafters. Nobody loves Joe Biden. Nobody. There's nobody in this country who thinks that Joe Biden is the best possible person to be president of the United States. There's only people that hate Donald Trump so much that they're willing to go with Joe Biden because they think he's most likely to win. And voter enthusiasm is what determines the election. So right now, I'm feeling pretty good.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're grateful for the time you invested to watch this program, and there's a lot more like this if you enjoyed it at BillWhittle.com. You can not only see it there, but you can also participate in ongoing discussions, even write for our blog on the website. All of that you can do if you're a member at BillWhittle.com. You can still see the videos if you're not, but I think you're missing out on better than half of the experience if you don't sign up and become a member at BillWhittle.com. It's our members who made this program possible, along with some 40 shows every month, and we are grateful to them. If you haven't joined yet, go to BillWhittle.com and click that big green Become a Member button. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching.